Welcome to Landscape Photography World, the podcast for everyone passionate about landscape photography. I'm Grant Swinburne and I'll be your host on this show discussing the wonderful world of landscape photography. This time I'm talking to Wanda Craswell. With years of travel, hospitality, tour guiding and business experience, Von has a compassionate and patient understanding of what it feels like to be a beginner photographer. Educated with a BA and post-grad studies in small business management and tourism, environment and culture, as well as NDIS training, it's a natural progression for her to combine skills and passion into creating small group photography workshops and tours. Born in Sydney, Australia, she's lived on the spectacular Sunshine Coast in Queensland for over 20 years, after growing up in Canada and then travelling, working and living in Alice Springs, Cairns, Darwin and the Kimberley for many years. An enthusiastic global traveller, having lived on 3 continents and travelled to 7, she shares her passion for photography, speaking about her fascinating life story, motivating others to improve their own photography, especially landscape photography, and embracing the excitement of discovering new places. Von is available for speaking engagements, private tuition, workshops and tours. I hope you enjoy the show. Hi Von, welcome to the podcast. How are you going?
I'm pretty good today. How are you, Grant?
I'm very good. Very pleased to have you on the show. Been following your work for a while and very pleased when you said yes. So thank you very much for that.
Oh, thanks for asking me. I feel very humble, actually. Thank you.
I'm very humble about my podcast. I don't have any pretense. It's the best podcast out there, though it really is the best podcast out there.
Of course.
So, what's the Von Craswell story?
Wow, where do I start? For photography or just me personally in general?
Wherever you want. Who is Von Craswell?
Well, I guess I have Polish heritage. I've lived in the UK, Canada, and Australia. Mm-hmm. So I've been in Australia again now about 30 years.
Okay.
This is pretty much my home now. So my immediate family is all still in Canada at the moment.
Whereabouts in Canada?
My mum lives in Ottawa, so I spent about 20 years there from when I was about 6 months old to my early 20s when I decided to come back to Australia.
Cool.
And then I never left. I came back for a year, but I'm still here.
Oh, why not? I think it's the best place in the world personally, but you know.
I do too. It's pretty fabulous. Yep. Well, initially I had learned to scuba dive in Canada, and obviously there's dark lakes and not a lot of tropical fish happening in Canada. And my plan was to get work around the Great Barrier Reef. So I flew to Cairns and I got myself a little job as a volunteer hostie on a dive boat. So I just got to dive for free. And then through that, I ended up getting a position as a cook on one of the dive boats. So we'd go out to sea between 3 and 7 days at a time. And I was cooking for up to about 35 people on a boat. Yeah, which was pretty cool. And the diving was amazing. I actually fell in love with photography then. Well, I fell in love with photography then, but that was back in the days with, pre-digital. So with slides, and I didn't know anything about it. We taught it on one of the dive boats I worked on. So I tried to pick up a few things, but I found it very difficult, to be honest. So yeah, that was kind of a short-lived career. I probably did more videoing back then, to be honest, but... Yeah. So I lived there for a while, a couple of years, and then I married an Aussie guy, a dive instructor, of course, and we went traveling around Australia, and then we ended up in the Kimberley. So we were tour guides in the Kimberley for 4 seasons.
Nice.
Which again was pre-digital photography, so nobody, you didn't have phones or internet or cameras or
no Instagram.
No Instagram, no Facebook. Back in the day, it was really good days, I have to say. But I have hardly any photos of that time, obviously, which is a shame because we saw amazing things, and it was the Kimberley really untouched. I don't even know what it's like now. Probably a lot more full of people, I would say.
Yeah, I'm just trying to remember the last time I was there. Would have been 2006, I think. Went to Broome and parts of the Kimberley.
Yeah.
I didn't get a lot. We were only there for about a week, and you could literally spend a couple of years there easily exploring.
Definitely.
Still not see all of it, you know.
Yeah. It was pretty incredible, actually. So that was an amazing time in my life. But it was also quite exhausting because we were with clients 24/7.
Yeah.
Didn't really have a break in the season. So my husband and I, my ex-husband, did 13-day circles around the Kimberley in a big 4-wheel drive thing. We took 12 passengers.
Yep.
And we would just go round and round and round from sort of April to October. So by the time October rolled around, we were pretty stuffed, to be honest.
I can imagine, yeah. Well, I mean, there's not a lot of accommodation in that part of the world. So what, were you just...
No, we were camping. We were camping. So we did camping tours. So every night we would help people set up a tent, or I would try and convince people to just sleep in a swag. And for some people, that was the first time they had done it ever in their life. So it's pretty daunting for a lot of people. We also had a lot of
clients. It's a very different experience to sleeping in a tent, isn't it? The swag.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely.
It's basically kind of a canvas sleeping bag with a bit of a hood.
Yeah.
That covers and
you're just on the ground, you know.
And it's on the ground, yeah.
On the ground. So, and we, a lot of this particular tour we did was, I guess, aimed more towards retired professionals from Victoria and New South Wales, so doctors and lawyers and things that had never been out in the bush before. So it was all very exciting and scary for people. But at the end of the trip, they were in love. I mean, they thought it was amazing. It's an amazing part of the world.
Yeah.
Can't wait to go back with a camera this time.
Yeah, I'd love to get back there. As I say, 2006, I think I was... still playing about with, in terms of digital, still playing around with the little Canon Nixus Happy Snapper, not a... I didn't have a DSLR at the time. I had the Minolta film camera, but didn't get a lot of anything but family sort of stuff there. So it wasn't...
It's funny, my dad tried to teach me photography. He actually did a lot of black and white photography. Okay. Beautiful portraits and things like that. And he developed his own film. And one year I was going to Mexico and I said, can I borrow your camera? And he said, okay, I'll just show you quickly how it works, and I just had no idea what he was talking about. And I didn't have much success because obviously it was all manual settings, and I just had no idea what I was doing. So that was my photography career, like start and finish in a week. That was about it. Didn't pick up a camera again for many, many years. So
was that the first time you'd picked up a camera, or had you? I
guess so. And I ended up getting into photography, funnily enough, because of Instagram. So it was around probably about 12, 13 years ago when Instagram came to Australia. And I was newly divorced, and I was trying to find old friends and just look at different things. Sure. And I hopped on Instagram, and at the time, I thought it was only for phone photos, so I was taking photos with my phone of different things and posting.
Well, I guess it really, that was what really made it, wasn't it?
Well, that was kind of the premise, I think, at the beginning was, you take a quick photo with your phone and you post it straight away. And then
right away,
Yeah, and then after a while, I was like, wow, there's some really amazing photos. How can they be phone photos? I was just stunned. Like, how did they take this, pre-dawn photo with the sun? Like, anyway.
Yeah, with phone technology at the time as well.
Yes, and so I kind of got wise to it and realized people were actually taking photos with a camera and then posting them to Instagram. So that was like a light bulb moment. And I thought, I kind of want to take better photos myself, how do I do that? And that kind of, I guess, started me going. So I was also doing quite a bit of traveling back then. So I planned a trip to the Galapagos Islands in Ecuador.
Nice.
And I thought, I kind of like to take some really great photos. And of course, like everyone, when they first buy a camera, they're like, oh, it's like a DSLR. I'm going to take great photos, and then you come
I've
back
got
and you're
better
a bit
gear
disappointed.
now.
Then you're kind of disappointed, and you're thinking, oh, that didn't quite work out how I envisaged my photography.
Everything on auto, shooting in JPEG, etc. Yeah, been there, done that.
Yeah, so that was like a little bit of an eye opener for me. I ended up shooting in auto most of the time, and I really didn't get shots that I was proud of. But I had a great time. It was an amazing trip, so I can't argue with that. And then I was planning a trip to Antarctica, and I thought, okay, maybe now I'll learn a little bit more about photography, because I am not coming home from Antarctica without awesome pictures. So I found a local photographer, and I did a couple of lessons with him, and he sort of started teaching me manual settings, and we just tried a lot of different things, like panning, or photographing a balloon full of water that you pierce and it explodes with water. And we did a few little tricks like that. And I thought, at the time, actually, I thought, I'm going to become a dog photographer, like a pet photographer. Just dogs. This was before this was a huge thing.
Yeah. And it's a massive
and I was convinced, I was like, that is my career, dog photographer. So yeah, that didn't work out too well either. I just found it quite difficult, actually, to find people who are willing to let me photograph their dog. And dogs are like crazy and unpredictable, and they, I live near the beach, so there's a lot of sand, and I thought, no, I'm not sure that this is really for me. And then I discovered that I quite liked being by myself with my camera in nature. I found it very super relaxing, and the landscape doesn't really talk back to you, and you don't have to tell it what to do. And
it does its thing. You record it, kind of.
Yeah, so it was quite an eye opener. So I thought, I actually don't mind landscape photography, and I started to do a few portraits. I still do a few portraits now. I do some for businesses, for their internet, their websites,
corporate,
like a yoga business or whatever. I do photos like that. But I guess I really fell in love with landscape. I really fell in love with landscape. I just find nature pretty incredible. I was brought up to appreciate and respect nature. My parents were very greeny, and they were very I guess you could almost call them hippies, way back years, when I was small. Like, I'm 54, so it was quite a long time ago. They were doing composting, and they weren't using plastic, and they already had it sorted out 45 years ago. So I grew up with a real respect of nature, watching David Attenborough documentaries, and I guess I started to fall in love with the nature more when I worked on the Great Barrier Reef, because obviously I was scuba diving every day, and the nature, it's an incredible world down there. The relationships between fish and I don't know, it's pretty amazing. So I kind of really cemented that when I started photographing landscapes. I thought nature is incredible. It's always different. Yeah, amazing.
No, great. So what made you decide to go into photography full time, and particularly sort of landscape, and how did you kind of come to that decision that was what you wanted to do?
Yeah, so it was quite a long process, because I think, like everyone who wants to be a photographer full time, you kind of have this romantic image of,
you just take photos and you put them on the internet.
Photos, and people buy them, and everything's great. So I enjoyed taking photos for a number of years, and I still had an office job. So I was working in an office and doing photographs on the weekends, and messing about with portraits and dogs, and just trying different things. And I guess I always had instilled in me quite a strong work ethic, and not depending on handouts and things like that. And I kept thinking, I have a mortgage to pay. Like, I don't have the freedom to just toddle around and do what I like. I have to have a secure income. So just going back a bit, when I was married, my ex decided to become a wedding photographer. And so we had that issue already, where he had a some weeks he'd make $20,000 for a wedding, and other times he'd make nothing for 3 weeks, so it was very difficult to, like, one of us had to have a secure job. And so that was always in the back of my mind, like, I really need to make sure I have it all together because I got nothing backing me up. So continued to work in an office, started to go to university as well. At 40, I thought, well, I've never been to university. I'm going to give that a go. And so that went on for, well, I'm going to uni now, actually. I'm going to UTAS right now. So,
okay, cool.
Yeah, so that kept me going as well. And then it kind of forced my hand because the business I worked for 20 years decided to sell. And the company who bought them out didn't really have room for my position. I was sort of the office facilitator. And so it kind of forced me in one way to make a decision, like, am I going to go and work in another boring office and like, or am I going to try and take a plunge and do photography full time? And what does that look like? And so that was only at the beginning of 2019, actually.
Okay.
And I had saved up quite a bit of money, and I spent it all in that first year doing like research trips to Tasmania and upgrading my equipment, getting insurances. Like, it's a huge minefield. It's not something you can consider lightly. And I didn't consider it lightly. I was very, very focused.
You've really got to do your research and understand.
Have to do your research,
you're getting
definitely.
Into.
Yeah. So it was a big process. And I was finally able to run a trip to Tasmania in November 2019.
Cool.
And it was awesome. Like everything came together. The ladies I had on the trip were awesome. Everything was perfect. Like, I learned a lot from doing it. How could I improve next time? Do I need to change anything? So it was all good. So actually 2020 was going to be, my big year of
boom year,
world domination.
There was a lot of people boom year, I think. I had big plans.
Kind of didn't work out that way. And also that year I had gone to Eastern Canada and I had researched doing a tour over there. So it involved a lot of speaking to people, my own research, photos, traveling. It was quite an intensive trip. And part of that reason was I wanted to be able to go to Canada more often to see my mom.
Sure.
And I thought if I ran a tour over there once or twice a year,
you could pop in and have a cuppa.
Yeah, exactly. Get my washing done. So that was a crushing blow, actually. So 2020, it all kind of fell apart. So, what I've been doing is lots of workshops up in Hervey Bay, which is a couple of hours north of here. I'm still planning to get back to Tasmania as soon as possible, but it's I just can't take people's money thinking that they're going to do a tour and then it all falls apart. Until I'm reasonably sure what's happening. And I have heard that Tasmania is looking to ban unvaccinated travelers coming to their state. So that's something I have to look at for my business as well. Like, I'm fully vaccinated, and I just think that's kind of something serious that you have to look at in the future.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's going to be a big part of a lot of businesses where there's 100%. Face-to-face contact that, if you are going to be in reasonably close proximity to people, you all get on the same bus or camper van or whatever, then, it's
And so during this, since COVID, I have actually run some workshops locally and in Hervey Bay, and wearing masks and, hand sanitizer. And it's really not, I'm a hugger. I love hugging people. And, it's been really difficult, actually. It's changed a lot of things, I know, for a lot of people. So that's been a challenge, but I'll keep going forward,
So has it changed your attitude towards the traveling part? Obviously you're doing the more local workshops at the moment, but you mentioned wanting to go back to Tasmania. Is it something you'd reconsider in terms of going to some locations worldwide, or?
Yeah, I think I'm probably going to concentrate more on Australian locations. So I have a couple actually in mind that I still need to go and research and sort of put an itinerary together. But I am looking at somewhere in South Australia, and I'm looking at things that are a little bit different than the norm. Like everyone goes to the Great Ocean Road, and everyone go. I kind of want to have things where people get a different experience and not necessarily just landscape.
Yeah.
So what I was working into my tours in Tasmania is something with a more personal touch, meeting some locals. I had on my Tasmania trip, I organized a little tour, a back behind the scenes tour of an oyster farm. So
Cool.
I sourced an oyster farm, lovely people, and we had to get high vis jackets, and they let us come in and watch the boys come in with the boat with the oysters, and we were able to photograph them, like pulling the oysters out and
Yeah,
sorting them
that's
and
great.
bagging them, which was pretty awesome. So I really enjoy that kind of thing. It's not necessarily landscape, but there's plenty of things to photograph that aren't
Absolutely,
landscape that are
yeah. I
still
mean, but that
interesting.
sort of documentary sort of style thing,
Yeah,
I think, that's very interesting to a lot of people, and
definitely.
yeah,
And my experience in the Kimberley also has shown me that people might have a main interest in one thing, but that doesn't mean they're closed to learning about other things.
no,
And
absolutely, no.
I
Yeah,
really, so my focus really this year, I guess, is learning more about Tasmania. And when I finally get there, I mean, I'm looking at spending sort of extended periods of time down there, to be
yeah,
honest,
right.
to do more research and learn more. And I would like to incorporate something to do with Indigenous lifestyle or businesses, things like that. So I'm always looking at, I guess, something to set me a little bit apart from the average tour there.
Just going and taking photos. All right, we're going to be at this spot for dawn and this place for sunset,
Yeah,
and between we'll go and have lunch or whatever. Yeah,
yeah. I mean, I definitely think there's more of interest, and you have to remember, like, a lot of people might come on a landscape photography tour, but they might like other photos too. They might not
absolutely. Yeah.
necessarily just be totally focused on landscapes. And there's a lot more to see. You can still shoot landscapes during the day, or if it's raining, or
Well, I mean,
plenty of
your
other.
wildlife photographers, I mean, doing that, sometimes sunrise and sunset is okay, but it's
Yeah,
usually not the best kind of lighting necessarily
yeah,
for that wildlife, you know.
yeah. That's exactly right. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So I'm
So,
just trying to. I'm really focused on building my community in Tasmania. That's
yeah.
my number one project. And then definitely other places. Was a couple of months ago, I guess I did a 3-week road trip up in North Queensland and the outback.
Nice. Yep.
And I mean, I love the outback. I really like places where there's not a lot of people, to be
Yeah.
honest.
I'm the
Yeah.
same. Yeah. The
I just
fewer
find it
people, the
more
better.
relaxing.
They
Yes,
don't get in
definitely.
frame then.
Well, that's true too. Yes. I love the outback. I mean, I've been traveling around the outback. I guess I've lived in Queensland for 30 years or something, and I just never get tired of the outback. I think it's incredible, beautiful, rugged. And I guess what some people say about my photography style is I can look at something that's kind of ugly at first sight, but make it look amazing,
Yeah.
and that's how I feel about the outback. You could look at it and go, wow, it's bleak and dry and boring,
Yeah.
but
Dry,
there's so
dusty.
much
Yeah.
more.
Dead trees. Yeah. But those dead trees make fascinating subjects. Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
definitely, I am looking at other places to do tours. I have a feeling that probably the next 4 or 5 years, it's really going to be Australia that I've got to
Yeah.
focus on.
Right. Yeah.
Um, yeah, I just think that's the safer option. And also, we don't know what flight prices are going to be like. And
No, that's very true.
I mean, even for Tasmania, I kind of have to rethink all my pricing, because obviously now things like car hire and accommodation and everything's kind of gone up quite a bit in price. So
Yeah. Yeah.
that's going to be interesting to see if people are willing to pay that extra cost, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah. I've I've had a look at a couple of overseas trips, and I've noticed that, since I was looking at them in 20 or early 2020 and whatever, not just the flights, but, these were like photography tours and that sort of thing. And the prices have just started to, go through the roof. And I think that's going to be a big test as to who's going to pay that kind of money for a photo trip,
Yeah. And I mean, what I see for my business too is having repeat clients, so someone might come with me for a weekend workshop in Hervey Bay, and then they go, oh, I kind of wouldn't mind going to Tasmania. I've already been with Fawn on a weekend, and I know I can trust what she's saying is right, and she'll deliver, and and then they might go to South Australia with me next time. That's kind of what I'm looking at, I guess, is maintaining relationships with past students and customers and things like that, and trying to build a network where I will have repeat business, because I think that's the way of the future for my business. I do a lot of private lessons and things. I also work in disabilities at the moment, so I have this kind of randomly fell into my lap, but I teach a weekly class of photography for people with disabilities, and so that's been quite fascinating. So part of my accreditation in Tasmania, I'll be doing another little accreditation for disabilities. And so that'll be interesting, because I'm very open to that as well.
Well, I wanted to actually touch on the accreditation and the accreditation process. How important do you think that sort of tourism accreditation in particular is to the photo tourism industry? And what does it actually take to obtain accreditation? Because I don't think a lot of people understand what accreditation is, or, how it works.
Yeah. So Tasmania, I mean, it's very important to them to be doing the right things, to be protecting the environment, people having insurance. They want to know that people going there are going to take care of the areas they go to. In my times in Tasmania, I've seen a lot of photographers, and I still continue to see a lot of photography that I know people have climbed the fence and they've, trampled down another path that's not open to the public or whatever. And I'm not really that photographer. I just think if people can, I don't know. I believe in protecting nature and things like that. So the accreditation process, it is time consuming, it costs money, and it involves a lot of paperwork, a lot of paperwork, and answering questions like, do you have a disaster plan if something happens? What happens if someone gets injured? What happens if this, just to make sure that you actually care about the people you're with, that you're responsible for, and what do you do in the case of an emergency or an accident, or, things like that. And so it is a long process. It's also to do with parks and wildlife. I have to pay entry fees for all my clients. And that's another thing I've really seen in Tasmania, especially, is little tour groups tootling around, and no one's got any kind of authority from Parks and Wildlife or accredited or anything. And I don't know, I guess I'm not very happy about it. I'm not a dauber either, but I just think people need to kind of work a little better. I think it's really unfortunate that there's a lot of cowboys doing things like that.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely with you there. I think, and a big part of that is, as you said, right at the beginning, talking about the way or the impact that tourism can have on the environment, and you see some places, particularly some of the overseas places, that get, so, the tracks are so worn down now, and, people leaving rubbish around. I remember I was talking to somebody over in the UK, and I don't know if you know Durdle Door, which is down on the south coast. It's sort of like the UK's equivalent of the Great Ocean Road, the 12 Apostles thing. It's that sort of thing. It's not sea stacks. It's actually an arch.
Yes.
Anyway, but so the usual shot is from the top of the cliff, and I was talking to this person, and they just said it was just they were horrified when they turned up there, because there was just rubbish strewn all over the place. There was,
Yeah.
people just not really taking care of the place at all. And I think, the photo industry has a lot to answer for, but also a lot of responsibility that it can take, and it's, drawn by things through social media and so forth, but I think a lot of people just, they don't realise what those impacts can actually have on an environment, and particularly delicate ecologies in places like Tasmania, and anywhere in the world really. But and I think that,
and I'm careful about things too. Like I was brought up to clean the area that you're in. So if you arrive somewhere for a picnic and there's rubbish,
or better,
pick it up. Yeah, exactly. And if you bring your lunch bag in there with your cling wrap, like take it out again when you leave. So even on my daily photography, when I go out for sunrise, I always have some kind of extra bag in my bag, so I can pick up rubbish and things like that. And I just think it's the right thing to do. So I always encourage people to do the same.
Yeah, definitely. Absolutely. Yeah. No,
but going back to that accreditation just for a sec, like that has actually opened up a lot of opportunities for me. So part of my accreditation, what happened during COVID was the tourism industry, obviously in Tasmania, was in pretty dire straits, and University of Tasmania actually got together with them and said, well, what if we offer your members some education for free? So I was invited to do a graduate certificate in tourism, environment and cultural heritage. And so that's what I've been doing the last year. And it's been really fascinating. We were talking just now about over-tourism and the environmental impacts. And we've been doing heaps and heaps of study about that. And I find it an incredibly fascinating topic. And I'm very curious to see if things are going to improve and change for the better since COVID, now that we've kind of realized, I don't know if you remember seeing footage of Venice last year, after all the tourists went home, and then the water was suddenly like clear, there was dolphins.
Dolphins in Venice,
which is pretty incredible, really. But I can 100% see how that's all coming from. And I guess part of the problem is Instagram and people revealing their locations and things. So I actually don't, unless it's like a pretty obvious place like 12 Apostles on the Great Ocean Road, I'll just say Tasmania or Sunshine Coast or on my locations, because I feel that everyone doesn't need to know. Like, if you really want to know my location, you will go and look for it and find it yourself. And it'll be more rewarding.
Know anyway from other photos, because you might not have exactly the same composition, but Belmore Falls, for example, in the Southern Highlands here in New South Wales, it's very recognisable because it has this massive drop for the first fall, and then a pool halfway down, and then another fall, and somebody takes a shot of Belmore Falls, it's Belmore Falls, no matter what angle you take it from, really.
So I'm super careful about that, and I get a bit of aggression sometimes from people if I'm not willing to share the location, but I don't care. I just think it doesn't matter. So I've actually joined. I'm a member of a group called Nature First, which is also about photographers taking responsibility for places they take people, and location sharing and cleaning up rubbish and that kind of thing. And I think it's pretty important, and it's definitely something I incorporate in my tours, and I'm very conscious of that. So my tours are very small. Like, I would never have 10 or 20 people on a tour. I would have 3, 4, 5, maybe max. I think that's a really nice small group size, and it's manageable, and everyone can get to know each other quite well, and that's more my thing. It's not the big tours of people clumping.
But I think also, as you know, running workshops, if you have too big a group with not enough instructors, I've been on a couple of workshops where there's been 2 or 3 instructors, and say roughly, I think between 3 and 6 people per instructor. That's a manageable number. But if you were trying to manage 10 people on your own,
Yeah.
It's almost impossible to give them enough one-on-one time to actually
Absolutely.
make sure that they've got value out of the experience as well.
Yeah,
It's
absolutely.
a big
And I
part of that.
know some people are really in it to just make the money. And
Yeah.
to be honest, the money is, of course, I need to earn money because this is my living. But I would never, I don't know, I guess I would never go over that, cross that line and say, I don't care anymore if people have a good time. I'm just going to book them, on the trip. If I get 20 people, great. Like I will always take small groups. That's just how I like more personal. I'm a very patient teacher, I've been told, and I like to take time with people. And
Yep.
the whole idea of them being there is to learn something and to gain from the experience. And if I can't give them that, there's no point in offering it.
Well, they're there to enjoy themselves, first and
Yeah.
foremost. And so
Yeah.
if you're not giving them an experience that they're going to enjoy, there's little point in doing it, I think. I mean, okay, there might be some, dodgy operators out there that are just in it for the money, but I think if you're going to get started in something like that, then you really got to have a long, hard think about what it is that you're doing it for, and it's not can't just be about the money,
And I'm pretty passionate about just teaching. Like I sometimes, honestly, I find it amazing that people are so wowed at my photos and they want to know how, because to me it's, I don't know, it's just natural. Like I look at it and think, oh, I've got to shoot portrait, style, and I've got to put this in the foreground. And so I find it interesting when people try to unpick it and make me tell them every little thing, because I don't actually know sometimes. Like I just go and set it up, and without thought, that's how I like it. So that's been a challenge for me, is how do I put that in words, to help people understand, how I get there.
Yeah, you always get the question, what settings did you use? I can't remember. And okay, I can go and have a look at the EXIF on the file and whatever, but it largely doesn't matter,
No, and that's what I teach. Like, I teach a lot of. I sell the NISI filters, and I teach. That is like the number one thing people want to know. How do I use filters? And when I remember back to my first time using filters or thinking about filters, I had no idea. I was like, wow, they look really cool, and I like the effects, but I don't even know the first thing about it, I try to watch little YouTube videos, and I'm not a very good YouTube trainer. Like, I'm not good at watching videos and getting a lot out of them. Like, I think, oh, that's cool, but then when it practically, I don't really get much out of it. So to me, a one-on-one thing is much better.
Lesson, the practical, And to be honest, I've probably got more out of YouTube for processing, because you can pause, try it out. Okay, that didn't work the same way that worked on what he did. Rewind it a bit. Okay, that's what I missed a step.
Yeah, I mean, I think we could agree. Like, I'm a very basic Photoshopper. I could spend hours a day trying to teach myself how to do Photoshop better, but I actually don't. Not that I don't like it. It just doesn't, I don't know, it doesn't come easy to me. It's very, very challenging. And often I try and learn something, and then it, like you said, then it doesn't work. And when I'm watching videos, I just never get anywhere. So I guess I've taught myself to try to take the best photo in camera as I can, using my filters and my settings. And then when I get it into Photoshop, it's not like I'm trying to get rid of the sky, or I don't know. There's amazing Photoshop people out there. I am definitely not one of them.
There's fantastic people, fantastic images created, in composite. I mean, I've played around a little bit with composites and whatever, but my preference again is to get it right in camera. Somebody asked me, whether or not that image was photoshopped, and I kind of said to him, I said, well, yes, it is, but that's kind of like saying to a chef, can you show me the recipe and the ingredients, but not cook it? Because you've got to have you've got to have a good idea about what you're doing to put those ingredients in to get the end result. And, to me, the Photoshop's the cooking part, and there's techniques in there that you need to know, but they're not the most important part. The most important part is, what am I cooking, and what am I putting in the pot? The ingredients.
Yeah.
And if you've got, it's very. I mean, it's not that hard, not as hard as it used to be to fix a poor shot.
Mm.
But if it's out of focus,
Yeah.
there's not much that's going to fix it. Though I think
Yeah.
Luminar AI is talking about something that'll fix fuzzy and out of focus somehow. But
yeah, no, I really try to teach people the techniques to have the best, so they could just take it off that camera and be proud of it without having to spend an hour on Photoshop. Like that's just not my thing. And I don't ever do composites or anything like that. Star trails would be kind of my only my only thing that I would do.
A bit hard to do them without stacking.
Yeah, but otherwise, I mean, I'm just pretty natural. Like I went out the other day to a local national park, actually, that I hadn't been to because I heard there was wildflowers everywhere, and I kind of went crazy. And I loved my shots. I didn't even edit them, to be honest. Like I just opened them up in Camera Raw and had a quick look and went, well, there's nothing really to improve. They look pretty good to me, so I just left them.
I love those shots where you can just bring them up and you go, yep, click, done, save.
Yep, for sure. So anyway, getting back to accreditation. I mean, there's a lot more to it. Like you have to have your insurances. They want you to have your first aid. And obviously first aid is something like I just did a refresher for my CPR. So that is an annual thing. It's like ongoing. It's not like you do all that paperwork and then you're done. Like you have to keep it up to date. They're always requesting something.
Like I remember the first time I did CPR would have been in the Boy Scouts in the late 70s.
Yeah.
And since then, first aid itself and CPR, just the process of CPR has changed.
Oh, 100%. I just did it 12 months ago. And
that's it. Yeah, every 12 months they come up with.
And especially with COVID, COVID has made us more careful about, bodily fluids and being close to people and that kind of thing as well. And so that's all a bit of a process as well. And the other part of accreditation, which I do like, is continuing learning and continuing educating yourself on different reasons. Like I've done a COVID safe module where kind of learn bits and pieces about how to make people COVID safe on my tours. And I have to actually answer a lot of questions again, like what are your processes and what happens if this happens, and so it does cause you to think a lot and plan a lot, and I guess be a more responsible business owner at the end of the day. Because
I think I think that's an important part of it. You've really that responsibility that you've got. You actually have people. I mean, they've got to take their own responsibility for their own safety too. But you are, whilst they're under your care as part of it too, they are your responsibility to a certain extent.
Oh, for sure. And this brings me back to when I was working in the Kimberley and working on the dive boats. You are responsible really for people when someone's really sick or they've cut their leg or they're like, they come to you. They come to you. You're the expert. Doesn't matter what it is. You're the expert, because you're the one who knows. And you do have to know a lot of stuff. And I like knowing stuff. I like learning, and as I said, I'm going to university still now, so I'm quite enjoying that as well.
Cool. What are you studying at the moment?
Tourism.
Tourism. Okay, cool.
Yeah, tourism, environmental, and cultural heritage. So it's about global issues with tourism. It's fascinating. Nature. How can we improve things? It's very focused on Tasmania, obviously, because it's at the University of Tasmania. There's a lot of really interesting things in there. Like I didn't realize how much Tasmania depended on cruise ship tourism, for example.
Oh, definitely.
And that's kind of, disappeared in the flick of an eye. So, there's a lot of places in Tasmania that are doing very, very tough. I don't know. I feel a real connection to, I really love Tasmania. I just think it's a beautiful, secluded little place well, it's an island,
Yeah,
it's
I
gorgeous.
mean, there's a lot of, particularly the southwest. I don't know if you've ever been down
Yeah,
Darwin and that.
yeah,
There's some places there that I think very few humans have ever even been to. In
oh
fact, I'm
yeah,
pretty sure there are some valleys where no human has actually trodden.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So I mean, definitely my focus is Tasmania and spending more time there, and I have people waiting down there for me to come and run a workshop for
Yeah.
them, so I still cannot get there, but I'll get there eventually, and I'll spend some time down there, and uh yeah, probably a month or two at a time, and just explore just with my camera, and meet up with some of the photographers down there who I know online, because that's a great community, the online community. But yeah, I'd like to meet people as well in person. So
So you've done quite a bit of shooting around the world. What locations are still on your bucket list other than Tasmania?
I haven't actually been to Scandinavian countries.
Okay.
So like I was actually I was 3 days away from going to Norway, and my partner was quite ill, and I had to cancel all my
Yeah.
travel. And so I missed Norway, and I've always wanted to go to Iceland, places like that. I like snowy, cold places much more than tropical, I suppose. Up the Arctic, Greenland.
Yep.
There's also Russia, those frozen ice lakes in Russia that I'd love to see. Mongolia, just out in the desert.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I feel like all the places I want to go are weird and remote and away from people. And I actually want to I have a big thing for jetties and piers. And
Yep.
so I would like to do a trip to the UK and just do all the giant piers that
Yeah,
I
there's a
know
lot of
of.
them there. Yeah.
There's a lot of them. So yeah, I would love to do that. And then I think, oh, and then there's like Northern England and the Isle of Wight. So many places. So many
Yeah, no, the
places.
list is always way longer than there will be time to get to all.
Yeah, and I actually have a bit of a waiting list for Eastern Canada when I eventually can run a tour. So we'll see how that goes. I'm not crossing my fingers for that just yet, but
Yeah.
maybe one day I'll do that.
Yeah, myself and the wife were looking forward. Last year, we were planning to do the Silk Road from
Oh,
Western China all the way through to Georgia. Uh,
fabulous.
yeah, but that's just parked and on hold. And
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, I mean that sort of unexplored sort of, well, it's not unexplored, but that sort of
Yeah.
landscape that you don't see a lot of photos of.
Yeah. And it's a bit off the beaten track. I mean,
Yeah,
as much as I love the Great Ocean Road, I think it is absolutely
yep,
incredible. But I want to go to other places that people haven't seen.
yeah,
And a lot of my travel, like I've traveled my whole life. And there's a lot of places that I've been to that were awesome and amazing, but they were before photography for me. So
yeah,
I
yeah,
have a couple of snapshots and things, but I think, oh, I should go back there and delve, more into it. And so I have a massive, massive list of places to go one day. Whether I'll get there, I don't know, but I do love Australia. I've traveled quite a bit around Australia in a combi van, and every other which way possible. So I will get to the Pilbara one day as well. That's
yeah. I've
my
I've not been over there.
yeah,
I mean Ningaloo Reef and all of that.
yeah,
Shark Bay. Yeah,
yeah. I mean, it's just beautiful over there. And I still remember from my times in the Kimberley, every fortnight, I'd kind of roll around to Broome, and it was like,
yeah,
oh, look at the ocean. It's just incredible. There's so
yeah.
many beautiful places. I mean, yeah, I don't know when we're going to be traveling. I don't think we're going to be traveling like we used to,
Yeah.
really.
I
But
don't think I mean I haven't run out of places to shoot in Sydney.
no, no, exactly.
I was talking to
Neither
someone.
have I. Neither have I. I've been trying to get to Sydney now for quite a long time again
Yeah.
to shoot,
I've,
because I actually love the city. Like I love
yeah.
urban nightlife and all. I think it's pretty amazing. So that's another thing I would like to shoot more of. But I live on the Sunshine Coast where we don't have city lights or nightlife really. So I have to wait till I get to a city again.
Yeah. Pardon me. Sorry, I'll just edit all this out. So we all have our inspirational and aspirational photographers. Who's your go-to person when you are looking to extend yourself?
Oh, wow. That's a really tricky one because there's lots of genres that within landscape that I think are amazing. I follow a guy in England, Wild Seascapes, I think he's called, and he does like ocean, just big waves and then beautiful birds flying across. I think it's amazing. I actually think you become the expert at your local beach, like stuff that you shoot all the time. That's when you're the best, and so for me, absolutely, I guess it's my local beaches here, but that doesn't mean I don't follow other amazing photographers. Maybe more because of their locations, like I'm jealous of their locations, and I want
it's funny. Everyone's got FOMO about other people's locations.
Oh yeah, and people do about mine. They're like, "Oh, you're so lucky you live." And yeah, I do love it here, but man, I would like to shoot something different sometimes.
Well, that's it. Yeah, because you kind of go, "Oh, I've done that again."
Yeah. So, I don't know, and I like. I mean, I really love travel photography. I do a bit of travel photography, and I would love to do that for a living. I would love to just be traveling a lot more, but who knows what's going to happen.
No, definitely.
Yeah, so I'm just sticking closer to home, and I'm building up my network. I've been doing monthly Insta meets on my local beach, and that's had a great response actually. So I find a lot of people don't feel confident shooting alone, or they don't feel experienced enough. And yeah, I say hi to everyone. We have breakfast and we do a bit of shooting, and people can ask me questions like, what do you teach if I did a lesson with you, and stuff like that. So I think it's a very good social and networking event, and I really like it.
Yeah.
I'm enjoying that.
I've been to quite a few meets here around the Sydney, getting to know a few people, and if nothing else, just using it for a bit of networking as well as the photography.
For sure, yeah, and because
prearranged, you can't guarantee.
Because I'm a reseller for Nissi and Sarui tripods and things, so that's also good, because some people don't know who to order through and they don't know who to trust. And, when they meet you in person, then they realize, oh, you're actually a person and you're a local, and I'm going to support that business, And
you're using the gear and so forth.
Yeah. So I think that's very handy as well. I follow a lot of drone photography. I'm fascinated with drone photography. I've had a few drones and I've dabbled in that field. And I wouldn't say I'm great at drone photography, but the only drone photography that really fascinates me is the top-down views of things. I just love them. I love them. So I don't know. I might buy another drone. I haven't decided yet.
I've got a guy, if you're interested in something a little bit different, a guy called Ty Bowmaker, I think his name is. He does what he calls drone lapsing. So it's video, but it's actually a series of still images taken from the drone that he time lapses together. And,
cool.
Some of those are absolutely brilliant.
I'm quite fascinating in drone photography, and how so many young people are excelling at drone photography. It's pretty rapid rise to excellence, I feel, and I'm very. I guess I didn't grow up with technology, really. Like, I'm in my 50s, so. But you got kids in their 20s who could just walk all over it. They just have no worries at all picking it up and trying it. Whereas I'm like, oh, what if I touch this button? What's going to happen?
I've been totally wowed by some young people that I've seen on Instagram and Twitter, like 14-year-old or 16-year-old photographers, and they're just doing absolutely outstanding work, stuff that, I couldn't have ever dreamt of. I mean, besides film days, I'm still envious of it, looking at what they're doing and going, wow, I wish I was that
amazing. Good. Yeah. And I mean, I believe in learning from people who inspire you. So I
Absolutely.
even followed that when I started photography. I thought, I'm not going to waste my money doing different workshops every weekend. Like if someone isn't wowing me with their photography, I don't really want to learn anything from them. And I've kind of stuck with that. So I've done a few workshops with portrait, masters and things like that. And I had a mentor for a very short time with a pretty amazing landscape photographer, and that was pretty good as well. So I really like to tell people, if you think I have something to teach you, like if you want to know what I do to get the shots that I get, come on a workshop, and I'll tell you everything. It's not smoke and mirrors. Like it's basic. Anyone can do it, but you have to practice a lot. I mean, I've gone 2 or 3 years going out every single sunrise.
Yep. And that's exactly the way that people learn, is that repetition. You constantly going out, looking at what you do, saying, oh, I didn't quite nail that, whether it's focus or whether it's aperture or whether it's shutter speed or whatever, And
I encourage people too, like if you get out on a regular basis, you start to learn how to change your settings on your camera without even really looking at your camera. Like it becomes sort of automatic. So you don't have to sit there with your head torch on and light up the whole countryside to try and fix a setting on your camera, because that finger on that dial will do the job. And it's just familiarizing yourself, I guess, with your equipment, which I think is fantastic, because you're in the darkness a lot of the time.
I think it's probably the most important lesson that you can learn in photography is understand your gear, and so that, as you say, you're not turning the head torch on or whatever. You can do it in the dark. You know where your settings buttons are just by feel. And I think if you just practice that, you go a long way to learning how to use your gear better, because you know where your buttons are, you know where your dials are, and
well, it becomes more instinctive, like absolutely. You just automatically go there. And the other thing I teach people is if you're going out for a landscape, like get there an hour before sunrise, not 5 seconds. If you get there an hour before, you can actually set up, make sure you know what you're doing with your camera, have everything ready. And so when the light explodes and the sky is amazing,
you're not going mad, going, oh my God, I'm not set up yet.
So often I'm very early, and sometimes I'm already taking a few test shots, just seeing if I like the composition, and I'm following the light. And you really notice, winter to summer, how the sun is in a completely different direction. And it always amazes me. I'm like, I'm sure the sun came up over there. Oh no, but maybe that was summer. So I'm not very big on following like apps like photo pills and clever apps like that give you every last detail. I just kind of go, I'm going to the beach this morning and I feel like shooting this jetty, and I just go there and wing it and see what happens. Sometimes not the great conditions, but you still learn from those conditions.
Absolutely. I've had some great experiences in what I would have thought, if I'd known what it was going to look like, I probably would have stayed in bed. But
exactly.
But there are some great times that I've had in what looked like really horrible conditions and got some really nice images out of them. I remember one at North Narrabeen, and literally I think the sun appeared as a kind of red dot on the horizon, between the horizon and the cloud, for about 30 seconds. And that was the total colour for the morning.
I know, it's pretty, it's nature. That's what I love about it. I'm always amazed at some photographers, and they go, oh yeah, I was looking at the cloud apps and it looks like it's going to be high cloud and there's this and that. And I just go, I'm just going to go out or not go out. Like I couldn't care less what the apps say. What I do look at is tide times when I'm shooting on the ocean. So I always look at tide times, but everything else, whatever.
I look at the apps, but the main reason I do that is largely to decide where I'm going to shoot, because if I know it's going to be high cloud, and then it doesn't matter where I go, but there are certain if I want a certain astronomical.
Yeah, if you've got a shot planned, yeah, for
and I'm
sure.
planning that shot, then I'll spend a bit of time planning it. But a lot of what I do, I don't plan, a long time ahead. There's a
I
couple of
think it's
shots.
more fun that way. I just,
Oh
and
yeah,
that's why,
yeah.
to be honest, that's why I shoot alone a lot of the time. I really enjoy shooting by myself, 100%. But what it means is if I have a plan to go somewhere and I get there an hour before sunrise and I go, oh my God, that's clumpy cloud. I hate it. I'm going to go here. I can just take off and go somewhere else. I still have time to get there nice and early. But when
That's
you're
it.
with other people, you're kind of bound to stick in that group, and I find it a bit stressful, and for
Yeah.
me it's my morning meditation going to take photos. So sometimes I do take people along or meet up with people. I guess as a female photographer, it's the safety aspect of, I know
Sure.
that some places I wouldn't go alone in the dark or that kind of thing, but generally I much prefer to be just by myself, and then I'm free to do whatever wherever I go. I'm not bothering anyone or waiting for people or.
Yeah. No, I know exactly what you mean. So what's the most memorable experience you've had when out shooting?
Oh, wow, most memorable. I would probably say when I fractured my vertebrae and fell. Yeah, that was on a local beach. They have these big sandbags that they put up as like breakwaters. And
Yep.
after a little while, the sandbags kind of harden up like concrete. They're fully hard.
Yeah.
And I was on top of one of them, just starting to shoot sunrise, and I slipped and fell down on the next level on my tailbone. And it was pretty scary because I couldn't breathe and I started hyperventilating and I was in a lot of, I don't know what was happening. I thought I bruised my tailbone, but actually the shudder, like the effect from hitting my tailbone went all the way up my spine, towards my neck. And yeah, so that was pretty tough, but I did save all my gear. So my gear was okay. And then I kind of hobbled to the car park. So it was quite a lot of sand I had to trudge through and I couldn't stand up. So I was all hunched over and just, anyway, ambulance and 6 weeks on my back.
My goodness.
So I will never forget that. And
No,
it's not so much about being careful. Like I'm always careful, but that's why they call it accidents. Like accidents happen. And I suppose in that way, shooting by myself is probably not a good idea, because if something happens to me and I'm all alone, what next? But I am pretty and I know how to manage my risks, like I know this beach, the rocks are super slippery, so I'm going to wear particular shoes, or, I'm pretty good at managing that risk. But obviously, accidents happen. What can you do? I mean,
no.
that was pretty bad. I mean, I couldn't walk. I wasn't allowed to walk for 6 weeks. So that was hard.
That's amazing.
I did a bit of macro. Did a macro in my garden.
And how long is it okay now? How long did it take to recover?
Yeah. So I fractured 2 vertebrae and 6 weeks on my back, and they did heal. So apart from that, I would actually say memorable things to me are like places I've been to. And so Antarctica would be my number one amazing. And I didn't even take that many great shots, to be honest, because I signed up for the sea kayaking portion of it, which was like quite a big investment. And I was terrified, and it was amazing because we were following minke whales and it was the most incredible experience. But it was really difficult to have a camera on the kayak. So I was in double kayak with my partner, but you pretty much had to be paddling, both of you, most of the time. Like the conditions they can change in an instant in Antarctica. So you could be on a glassy, calm lake 1 second, and then the next second you're just paddling like buggery to get out of there because the winds picked up. So a few people on that trip had lost their cameras, over the side, never to be seen again. And I had a little, like a Nikon underwater compact camera that I had looped around my neck probably, but I really didn't take any photos. But the memories of that will never, they'll never go away.
I think some of the best experiences is when not necessarily when you don't have the camera, but when you're actually just enjoying nature and
Oh,
what's going
yeah.
on around you rather than
It
trying to
was
capture it.
incredible. And what was amazing about that trip was there was no internet either. So I
Nice.
actually really enjoyed that, because if there is internet, I'll be on it. Like, I'm on Instagram, a couple hours a day, really.
Yeah,
So that was excellent for me. I thought that was brilliant, not having
yeah.
internet. I highly recommend it. But if you are forced to do it, it's really good.
Nice to take a break from it occasionally, I think.
Definitely, most definitely.
So have you ever hit a creative wall?
Uh, yeah, I guess I sort of lost my. I used to go out for sunrise every day, like I said, for quite like a year or two, probably. And then I don't know. For some reason, I started sleeping in a bit and getting up when the sun came up, and that was really nice. And I just kind of lost track for a while. Didn't want to get out much. Kept thinking, oh, so tired of going to the same beaches, and I just took a little break for a while, I suppose. And then I try and shoot something different. So that's when I'll go bush, and try to do some macro flowers or things like that. And
Yep.
I find it really interesting to be teaching other people, especially in this with my people with disabilities, because they have their own unique view of things. And so sometimes that can stir something up that gives you a bit of creativity. I have one lady on one of my classes, and she actually shoots very similarly to me, like not landscape necessarily,
Yep.
but she just has her camera. And often I look at her photos of things that she's seen on our walks, and I think, wow, I would have taken a photo of exactly that same thing.
Yeah, wow.
Whereas other people take completely different things and think they're fascinating. So we did one class, I remember, where I was finding drains, like just drains in the ground with the grid.
Yep.
And some of them have numbers, and some of them have like letters punched in, and some of them have colors. And we just did a whole class on that. They were just laughing at me. They were like, there's something wrong with you. What's drain? But actually at the end of the class, they were quite surprised that there was so many interesting drains around the neighborhood.
Wow.
So,
to be honest, I don't think many people look at them. So
no, they don't. I even found some with my exact initials on them, so I don't even know how that happened. But yeah, just fun, I guess, when you lose your creativity with something. Like for me, obviously landscape would be my number one. I just take a little break, or I try to go to a different location.
Yeah.
Or I try to go out with someone, like a friend of mine, or someone that I know shoots differently or thinks differently or whatever. That can help as well, just bouncing off ideas or seeing what they come up with. That can be quite good for your creativity as well.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So have you got any particular photographers that you think I should be talking to on the podcast?
You should talk to this lady in Sydney, Kathy Wallace. So she shoots like urban architecture.
I've seen Kathy's work, yes.
Yeah, she's great. So I was able to meet her last time I got to Sydney last year, finally, to visit a family member. And I met up with her. We sort of knew each other online. And yeah, she took me out to look at a bit of architecture. And it was awesome. Like, it was so much fun. And for me, it was something very different. Like, I always like architecture, but I don't really think to shoot it very often. So
yeah.
That was actually very good for my creativity, for sure. So yeah, definitely hanging out with people of different genres, I think, is a clever idea.
And I think that's important. I mean, you mentioned you sort of worked with a portrait photographer, and I mean, even looking at other art forms and the way that light gets used, I think, that it's a really good thing to look at those different genres of art in general, but, look at the way, painters use light, and look at the way that, portrait photographers are using light, and, you can bring lessons from that back into your landscape photography.
Yeah, and trying to, well, that's right, understanding light, because landscape photography is about understanding light as well. Like, if you're shooting into the sun, what happens? And if the sun is coming in from the side, it's going to light up that side of the mountain. And I mean, there's so much amazing light early in the morning or late in the day. I'm much more early morning person, but yeah, light is incredible. It's incredible. So this one thing I did with a portrait photographer is we did some natural light portraits and just using like harsh shadows. So it was the middle of the day, but we had these awesome angles coming down, next to her face. And it was quite an interesting way of looking at things, to be honest, because you don't know what you don't know. So there's nothing wrong with learning and learning from other people. So
totally. So if you weren't a photographer, what would you be?
Ooh, I don't know, actually. This has been my problem my whole life. I have never really known what I want to be. And I've worked in hospitality and tourism and business, office work. I've studied business. I would probably, to be honest, I would go into something involving tourism. I love tourism. I think it's fascinating. I love travel. I mean, when I was younger, I wanted to be a flight attendant. That was my thing. But I'm actually blind in one eye, completely blind in one eye. So flight attendant was not going to be on the cards for me, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's not all glamour either.
No, especially now. But yeah, tourism, I find it really interesting how people choose to travel and what they're looking for. And I like the study of people, like anthropology, I find really fascinating, and just the culture of people. So definitely something to do with that. I guess I could probably be teaching more. I do quite a bit of teaching and speaking at camera clubs, and I really enjoy teaching. Like I just like when people get a light bulb moment, or if they learn something that they were stumped with. I get a lot of enjoyment out of that.
Yeah, no, great. I've got one more question, and it's probably the most important question. Do you like pineapple on pizza?
What's that?
Do you like pineapple on pizza?
No.
No?
Definitely not. You can't have warm pineapple. It just tastes
no.
No. I'm a big, I only like 3 things on pizza: pepperoni, mushrooms, and raw capsicum. That's it.
Fair enough.
That's my favorite pizza, and that's what I eat. No pineapple. No pineapple. Pineapple is wrong. It's no.
It's a very divisive issue, this, but I think
it is a divisive issue.
It's important that we find out and get to the bottom.
Yes, we got to find out the details of important questions, and it's a no from me, my friends.
Fair
Definitely.
enough.
So don't ever invite me over for pizza with pineapple.
It's okay. I'm fairly neutral on it. If it's the only pizza around, maybe, but
I would still pick it off.
It's not what I order. Oh no, I wouldn't pick it off. I don't mind.
Very good.
All right. Well, thanks very much, Von. It's been fantastic talking to you.
It's been really enjoyable. I do like to talk, you may have noticed, so it's good.
Well, that's fine. That's what this is all about. So.
That's what podcasts are for, isn't it?
That's
People
exactly
who like to talk.
It'd be a pretty boring podcast if neither of us spoke.
It would be. Good point. I like it. Yep.
So where can people find your work?
So I'm on Instagram, Wanda Craswell Photography. I'm on Facebook. I have a website, wandacraswellphotography.com, where I have galleries and things like that. And you can reach out to me. I have people asking me questions quite a lot on Instagram, and I'm on there quite a bit. So chances are I'll respond pretty quickly. From people wanting to know what gear I shoot with, or what settings I'm using, or whatever, or just want to say hi. I'm always around, and I plan to make this photography bizzo a career for myself for quite a number of years. So I'm still plugging away at it, and if you think I can teach you something, come and see me. I can.
Fantastic. Thanks very much, Von.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
No problem. Thanks again for listening to Landscape Photography World. I hope you enjoyed the show, and keep listening, because I'll be joined by some great guests in upcoming episodes. You can find my work and this podcast at grantswinburnphotography.com. I'm also on Instagram, Twitter and Facebook. I'm Grant Swinburne, and hope to see you out shooting soon.